Canto Valley is a weird place. Whether it's the small caves throughout the woods which sometimes open and close without rhyme or reason, or the abandoned cottage in the center of those woods where the red flowers bloom out of season, or the albino deer with their pink eyes, matted fur, and the noises they make, sounding like screaming children, Canto Valley has earned its reputation for being a home to the unusual. Some of the things a person might find in the woods are frightening, such as the mutilated critters left behind by that thing we call the bear. Other encounters are ominous, such as the ruined campsite with the tents and sleeping bags slashed to ribbons. And still others, such as the abandoned logging camp, can fill a person with a deep melancholy. The belfry, on the other hand, tends to leave those that first see it with a profound sense of confusion. In the woods is a clearing, about 200 feet across, and in the center of that clearing is a single tree. Not the bent and twisted ones that bleed red sap, but a sturdy live oak, with a thick trunk and thick, low-hanging limbs, taking up about 50 feet of that clearing, and stretching more than 60 feet into the air. We called it the belfry, and the confusion people have when they first see it comes from the hundreds, if not thousands, of gold sleigh bells tied to its branches. No one, not even my father, knows who tied those bells to it, or how long it's been like that, though I have my suspicions on why they did it. During heavy winds or a storm, the belfry can sound deafening up close. But with a soft breeze, you can close your eyes, and the gentle ringing of the sleigh bells can make it feel like Christmas, even though it never snows out here. The bells also make it obvious if someone is climbing inside the tree. This is important. Back when my mother was sick, my brother and I, young as we were, would occasionally escape to the woods, as if running from her illness. Don't get me wrong, we spent countless hours by her side, trying to comfort her and take care of her. My brother would try to be strong for her, and I would cry and tell her I was sorry that I had said I hated her just before she got her terminal diagnosis. As weak as she was, she would still comfort us. But kids can be a bit selfish. As helpful as we wanted to be, there was a piece of us that felt neglected. Not necessarily by our parents, but by the world in general, like we were wronged in some way to have our mother withering away before our very eyes. In the woods, we could escape that illness. We would spy on the albino deer, watch the twisted and bent trees to see if they moved, and we would also lie down under the belfry when the breeze wasn't too strong and let the ringing sing to us like a lullaby. When my mother died, my father, brother, and I were all broken, and it would take months for us to recover. For the first time in my life, my brother did not want to spend time with me, whether at home, in the town, or in the woods. In fact, when I suggested going to the woods, my brother yelled at me and told me to shut up about that place. We were just kids, and it happened years ago, but I can still clearly remember how scared I was when he screamed. And in my mind, I could not help but think that not only had my mother died, but I had lost my brother also. He and I faced the immediate loss of our mother separately. I would talk with Mr. Carver, though, and made friends with a boy I would later regret ever speaking to. But months later, my brother and I began spending time together again. I couldn't quite tell you how it happened, only that it did, our familial relationship being mended without any grand fanfare or special event. We just began playing together, hanging out with more of the kids in the town, becoming close to Ethan and Javi, and exploring the woods to our heart's content. Except the belfry. I didn't think too much about it at the time, but it was years before we went back to the belfry. As small as our town is, there's so much to see and explore in the woods that certain places can easily escape your notice. We were too interested in searching for the tower for the Deepwood radio station, or examining the tracks of the bear we would find in the dirt, or playing in the logging camp, or seeing who could get closest to the abandoned cottage before chickening out. So, when Ethan said he heard some weird sounds coming from the belfry, I realized I hadn't been there in a while, and decided to go with him to investigate, even though it would be getting dark soon. At first, nothing seemed to have changed in the year since I had been there, but when I made it to the edge of that clearing and saw the huge oak tree, something felt different, out of place, subtle yet unsettling. I walked a dozen steps into the clearing before stopping in place and stared at the tree, Ethan turning back to look at me, confused. I looked at the surrounding trees and saw them motionless, not a breeze to be found. But the bells of the belfry were ringing, rhythmic, like someone was walking on the limbs of the tree. Ethan looked ready to speak, likely to ask what I was doing, but he closed his mouth when we both heard a voice calling out from the belfry. It spoke to me. A familiar voice, someone I knew, called me by name, asking me to come over to them. I couldn't see them through the branches and the leaves of the tree, but I started walking forward, hoping to get a better look. An arm grabbed me from behind and yanked me back forcefully, and I yelped in surprise, my heart in my throat as I spun around to find my brother standing right behind me, as if he had materialized out of thin air, and I saw Javi running towards us, breathing hard as if he had been struggling to keep up with my brother. I was going to shout at him for grabbing me and surprising me, but before I could, he said, "That's not her." My heart then dropped into my stomach as I turned my head back to the belfry, just in time to hear the familiar voice call my brother by name and ask him to bring me to the tree with him. It was the voice of my mother. My brother almost had to drag me out of the woods. I hated him in that moment and screamed obscenities at him that would have gotten me grounded for weeks if my father had heard them, but he managed to pull me out beyond the tree line. After sending Ethan and Javi away, he grabbed me by my shoulders and said, "That's not her. That's not her voice." I choked up a bit at this, not crying, but certainly shedding a few tears. Back at the belfry, I had been so certain it was her, so certain that I would finally see her again after so long. As I began to calm down, and as the sun began to well and truly set, my brother told me the truth. A week after she died, I went into the woods alone. Seeing my mouth hanging open, he continued, saying that he had been walking outside by himself, anger and sadness boiling inside of him, when he heard it coming from the woods. A voice, our mother's voice. Like me, he had followed it without thinking, but unlike me, there hadn't been anyone there to stop him. He didn't know how he had made it so far into the woods alone, without anything else impeding him or hunting him, but he did. He followed the voice as if in a trance, as it moved from one tree to another, until he finally made it to the clearing, where our mother's voice called out to him from the belfry. He got close, very close. Not close enough to touch the tree, though, but close enough to see. "See what?" I asked. "To see that it wasn't her," he replied as we finished walking home, ending the conversation there. He still doesn't talk about it, and I have enough sense not to ask. But in Canto Valley, the weird is commonplace, and small towns always have their gossip and ghost stories. It didn't take long for me to hear what others had to say about it, about this voice. They said it moved in the trees, and if you squinted hard enough, you might make out the silhouette of a person amidst the limbs and branches. Its feet never touched the ground, and if it wanted to snag you, it needed you close enough to a sturdy, low-hanging tree limb. To draw you in, it mimicked the voice of someone you cared about, someone you missed, someone whose very voice could charm you. Of course, they also say that, if you get close enough to see it, you'll see the face of the one whose voice it impersonated. I can't tell you if all of that is true or not, but I can tell you this. If that thing impersonated the face of our mother, it wasn't good enough to fool my brother. But at dusk, Years later, when the bells of the belfry rang without a breeze to carry them, I heard that voice call out to me again, and it was still a perfect imitation of my mother.